All right. Good evening. Happy Saturday, friends. If somebody can comment from each of the pages and tell us where you're watching from so we can make sure they're all working before these guys start talking.
I'm going to check here.
I'm not seeing any comments.
Right now it has just one viewer, so I don't see anything. If y'all look at my YouTube, maybe, but on my end, it's not saying live. It is though up here. So wherever.
Yeah.
All right, there's more hopping in. We got some likes.
Okay. All right. So again, I'm Ashley with Last Call. Julie.
I'm Julie with Run and Gun Catfishing.
I'm Dave. We're from Dave All Over YouTube channel.
And I'm Justin Browning.
We're excited to have these guys on. They've got a lot of information to share with you. Just real quick before we hop into all of that, we had some questions that came up last week before we ended. And I did talk with ODNR and the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife folks. So before we end tonight, we'll finish up those questions and see if anybody has any more for us to take back to them. So, Dave, you want to start us off?
Sure. I would like to thank you guys for really taking an interest in this. It's been a long road. I mean, there's nobody that probably knows that better than Justin does, but it's sort of something that we've all tagged along somewhere along the way and brought something to the table that we have. And for me, that was, I've got a channel. I have a very analytically minded sort of the way I approach things, and that kind of made me perfect for this sort of thing. And I really believe in it. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of conservation conversations that don't take place that need to take place, and I just want to thank you guys for opening up your platform to it.
Yeah, no problem. We're happy to help.
Yeah,
and I appreciate you reaching out too. I don't know if it was a coincidence or what, that we had just decided we were going to start doing this, and then you reached out after the first time. Her and I just kind of chatted during our first podcast, just letting people know that we were doing this. So but it kind of worked out well, the timing, if it, because I think you were reaching out to several people, weren't you?
Oh yeah. I was trying to have the biggest mouth I possibly could to get anybody I could to listen to me, especially from the state of Kentucky, and you guys were right there. So
yeah, it worked out well. Ashley, did you want to go over some of the questions?
Yeah. So one of the questions that we had, somebody asked why they're not enforcing the bait law in Kentucky. So I talked to the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife guys, and they said that the way that the law reads is that if you have a bait license, you have to do it based on commercial fishing methods, and a rod and reel is not a commercial fishing method. So if you're fishing individually, like when we go to the dam to catch bait for tournaments or fun fishing, we can catch all we want. But if you have a bait license, is it 50? Do you guys know that you're allowed to have, like, what the limit is for skipjack?
I know what I was told just through going live and bait fishing live for fun the last week. The limit is 500 for skipjack for an individual, but I don't know with the bait dealers what they have to follow personally.
And one of the other questions that we had was
100, just right here in the comments.
Henry had a question.
No, he said 100.
Okay, 100.
That's the limit in Tennessee now. I know 100 is the limit in Tennessee, and DNR does check that, but I'm not sure with commercial what it is for Kentucky.
Okay. And one of the questions that we had was from a friend of ours that fishes the Ohio River. And if we see limb lines, trot lines, etc., that are there and not marked, what we can do about those.
They are considered trash.
Yes.
According to ODNR. They say that if we see them unmarked, to call them, to either call
Yes.
the 1-800 poaching number or your county officer. And I actually have a list of the county officers that I picked up from CatCon. So I will take a picture of that and get it posted on our Facebook page and send it to Julie, so we can kind of share all of that stuff. And one of the other questions that we had was, why do we not ever see any ODNR on the water down by Cincinnati? So he was more than happy to answer that question. I'm trying to find where it is. He said that they were on the water, but they also take care of inland, so like the lakes and stuff around the area. But last year alone, that they had more than 400 sightings that they did. So they said if you see reckless behavior, if you see any of that kind of stuff, you have to call them. Like, they can't be everywhere at once. And that's a lot of what Kentucky told me too. Like, when we see these guys taking multiple fish over 34 inches, and we know that they're big fish, to take a picture of them, try to video them so you can get a description of the boat, and to either call Fish and Wildlife, or you can call the Kentucky State Police, because they dispatch for them. And they said they take this very seriously. But the problem is that there's 123 counties in Kentucky, and they don't have that many officers. So each officer is responsible for 4 to 5 counties. And if it's deer season, deer takes precedence, turkey season takes precedence. But they want to help us. They know it's an issue. So we just have to kind of all work together.
Yeah. It's something that I've always maintained for years, that trot lines, this could probably anger some people. I grew up trot lining, limb lining, bank lining. My family were passive fishermen. We filled freezers every year. I knew from a very young age that was going to die with them. I was not into that. I did not like the fact that we took that many fish out, but I've never actually been an activist against it, because I've always maintained that trot liners will get trot liners banned. Bank liners will get bank liners banned. And it's exactly for that reason that you're talking about is why. There's just for all the things that we see in commercial fishing and pay lakes, and the things that people get riled up about, there's that much, and probably double, from the recreational side of the house, that we need to clean up ourselves some way, somehow, by doing exactly what you just said. You need to be calling people. You need to be documenting this stuff. Take pictures. Call your wildlife officials. So, but yeah, that's something that I've always thought about, is those people are going to take care of themselves. It's eventually, I think it's 14 states have completely banned passive methods of fishing.
That's good.
And it's specifically for that reason right there. It's kayakers getting caught in old trot lines. It's, people floating down the river and getting caught in limb lines and drowning. There's all kinds of hazards that come with it. And it's literally just those people not policing themselves. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But they did say that, like, they want information. They want to work with us. I know, like, the tournament trail we fish down on the Ohio River, it's getting ready to kick off next weekend. I've told all of the DNR guys that I've talked to about it. They've asked for the schedule. They want to pop in and say hi, because I told them that there's some relationships that need some mending, because the recreational fishing feels like you're not hearing them. They feel like they're just being pushed to the side. So, and they say they hear the same thing from commercial guys. Commercials say that they're coming down too hard on them. We're putting too many restrictions, and pay lakes. And he's like, we just have to kind of meet in the middle, find a common ground, and know that, like, we want to help everybody. So it's a process, and, hearing everybody. And he did say, like, when you go to your legislatures and you try to get bills passed, they're going to listen to the group that has the most people. So Julie and I have said this repeatedly, and I know, like, Justin, Dave, all of you, if you want to see change, you have to do it. You can't just sit here and type it on a keyboard and say, this needs to change.
Posts. Yeah. You got to actually make the call or show up.
Yep.
Yeah, the most difficult thing that I've learned throughout this entire process was getting Kentuckians to pick up a phone and call their representatives. I mean, that was incredible. Like, I mean, just I think they eventually started to do it. So I think we made a dent there.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that they just?
I mean, I think it's Kentuckians are independent. I think it's people that really. I don't want to make this sound in a bad way, because I don't think it's a bad way at all. But like, as far as these are people that have a sort of a mild distrust for even local officials, let alone big state government. So Kentuckians are independent. They want to handle it themselves. They want to go about their business. If you're not bothering me, I'm not going to bother you. And even if you are bothering me, I'll say something to you and I'll deal with it myself. And so I think that's sort of, and there probably was this idea, and this really only popped up in like the last 10 years, where it's like you're 3 clicks away from talking to the most powerful person in your entire state. That has not been the case 20, 25 years ago. You actually had to write a letter or actually show up to a state assembly and you might be heard. Today, there are rooms full of people that will contact your congressman for you. All you got to do is make the call and they'll call you back. Like, it's so easy. Anybody can do it for almost any reason. So I think that's probably why, for the most part.
Yeah. So what is it that you have been kind of doing in the background? What is it that you can help educate people on while we're here? I know it's probably a long list, but just to kind of explain, because what you told me, I never knew anything about, and so I'd like to be able to share with other people that are watching today.
So basically, I tackle it from 2 positions. One, I'm always looking for any sort of grassroots type movement I can get out of the recreational side of people, where I can get them together and say, and then go to a larger group, or perhaps even call a congressman and say, hey, I have these people. This is what we want to do. There's always that sort of avenue that you're always looking to approach. But there's also, like, as far as my YouTube channel goes, I'm working on, at least like right now, I have one big thing I'm working on. I worked on it for a year. And basically what I did, and I really contemplated whether or not I was going to talk about it tonight, because I don't want it to disrupt the data. But I didn't like the data from a year ago because it was so crazy. But I'll just go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah.
So what I started doing was I picked 10 pay lakes, and I was going to make a video, and I'm still going to make a video about it. But I picked 10 pay lakes in Kentucky and Ohio. And what I did was I started documenting the pounds, for example, every single Facebook post. It started adding up. The numbers are outrageous. That's why I didn't like the data. I was like, there's no way. Somebody's lying. Okay, somebody's lying. When you look at the amount of pounds that the states are documenting per year versus what the Facebook pages are saying from these pay lakes, there's a massive discrepancy.
Oh, massive. So like you mean where they have to turn in the logs for what they're catching. Yes. So viewers, if you don't know, there's logs, at least for Kentucky. You can say maybe there's other ones as well, but you have to log what you catch as a commercial fisherman.
Every state.
So every state has to do
every
that.
State.
So that's what he's referring to if y'all didn't know. Okay, go ahead.
And the forms are a little different, but the process is basically the exact same for every state. I was actually just looking at Ohio's today to just confirm a few things. But yeah, they're all pretty much the exact same thing. So there's that little project I'm working on, but this year I would like to expand it to 50 and just see how stupid it gets. I mean, somebody's lying to somebody. Either they're lying to their own clientele or they're lying to the state. One of the two is going on. But it's really incredible.
It's all public record.
Yes.
Can you say what individuals catch? Sorry, or is it just as a whole? Is it like? So
I'm basically just like it's kind of tricky with the commercial fishermen. It's a lot easier if you just go by what the pay lakes say. Yeah. Because they want everybody to know. They want everybody to know. So it's so easy. They'll tell you 5 ways to Sunday on their Facebook page, and you can actually see a visual representation of it as well. So it's just easier to just. Right now, I'm attacking the pay lakes right now. The commercial fishermen will deal with that at a later date when I actually come up with the data. But as far as the way I'm doing it, I had some reservations about talking about that. But the reality is these people are not afraid of us. They're not afraid of you. They're not afraid of me. They're not afraid of Justin. They're not afraid of anybody. They laugh at us. So It really doesn't matter. I'm sure there are some of them watching right now. I'm 100% guarantee. They follow me around like, like flies on trap. So, and I'm sure Justin's the same way, but it sort of just comes with the territory. But yeah, those are some of the things that I'm working on.
Have you guys looked at the results of the commercial fishing, like the logs? Have you ever looked into those? I know Justin and I talked about that before, I think. But
yeah, we pulled a commercial fisherman's report. We did an open records request, and he had turned in 600 pounds the whole year out of the Ohio River. He was on the river every day or every other day pulling nets. I mean, he should put stocking videos on of stocking after he left the river, and stocking, 1,500 pounds, 600 pounds, 3,000 pounds, 2,200 pounds. I mean, this went on daily. When we asked the DNR about it, their theory was, well, why would he lie? That's what their answer was. And but now, since they busted them last year, they had a bust in Kentucky. They busted I don't know how many pay lakes they fined a bunch of them. And so now in Kentucky, because Kentucky has that 750 pounds of trophy fish per surface acre 3 times a year, that's a regulation in Kentucky. And so now they're doing videos, but they're not putting the poundage down on how much they stock, because that's what got them popped last time. So now Ohio pay lakes are still doing it, but in Kentucky, on all their videos, just about, unless once you get out of that main, the 10 or 15 main pay lakes, then you'll see some. But I mean, we just turned one in 2 days ago. But they're not putting how much they're stocking in. They're doing a stocking video still and all that, but they're not saying how many pounds they're putting in.
Well, I asked him about the reports and like how they go. I'm like, but do you actually do it? Do you actually look at those reports? Because I know we talked about that on the phone with the both of you.
Yeah, we have.
And he said, so if it's like February, they have until March 10th to turn in their report. If they don't do that, they get a warning, like a reminder, like, hey, you need to do this. Then they get a warning. Then they get a second warning. And then they get like a slap on the wrist. And he's like, I'm like, so they get 4 chances. And then you still don't really do anything, because once they become current, they can go right back to doing it again.
Yep.
And he said that like anybody can look at those reports. You just have to file like the public request or whatever, and that they should be posted like on their website or whatever.
Yeah, you have to file an open records request to get them. I think they told you like a fee to, it's like 10 cents a page to copy them or whatever to send you. But it's I mean, the honor system is broken. It don't work in Kentucky, and that's the biggest problem we have. It's just a broken system, and they don't want to correct.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on it when commercial fishing really started getting big in the late 80s and mid 90s and stuff. And the reason for that is because there was a shift in the mid 90s, because filleted fish was really the order of the day, and you didn't have a huge sort of recreational catfishing community out there, the sport fishing, like it is today. And so what you ended up with is somewhere in the mid 90s, they started going after these big fish. The problem was the regulations didn't keep up. That really ultimately is like, in essence, what happened was you had a clash really in the mid to late 90s, and these agencies really haven't kept up with it.
Yeah,
is ultimately what's happened here.
Absolutely. Somebody had commented and said you'd see how many more go to the market than the pay lakes and whatnot. So, I mean, do you think that this is also a problem as well, beyond just pay lakes, that these trophy catfish are, or more numbers than they're supposed to are going to markets too?
So from what I've looked at, so from what I've looked at from market experts, they're self-proclaimed, I think, but they're saying that the filleted market is still strong throughout Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi. I don't think that's the case. I'm sure some of their fish may go to market. I think your big markets on the East Coast for filleted fish, anybody that, because that's where they're catching the filleted fish, the 4 to 7 pounders, and they're using electroshock technology, and your costs are very minimal. That's probably where most of your filleted wild caught catfish are coming from. As far as the Ohio River Valley, I would say a minimum of 70% of your fish are going to Pay Lakes. That in terms of pounds.
Yeah. So
Dave, can you see this comment that popped up? But they are taking hundreds of millions of pounds. Why are we complaining about the few that are going to the Pay Lakes? So can you guys, for people that don't know how much they're stocking in these Pay Lakes, can we talk about that for a minute? Because I don't feel like that's an accurate statement.
Well, he's also added China as the #1 consumer as well. So I don't know if you have any input on all of that.
Right. So what they're looking. Oh, go ahead, Justin.
A lot of these, the two major markets are New York and Chicago. The farther south you go, the more of the consumer market you get. Up from, pretty much Ohio north, there's not much of a market for a demand, except for the Asian markets in New York and Chicago, and they're getting shipped all over the world. Now, I will say that it is definitely a problem. I mean, but we can only take on one problem at a time, and we got to take on the problem that that's. I think I should say the easiest problem. The easiest problem is the Pay Lakes, because it's in the public eye. They're making money off of it. I shouldn't say it's. They're taking the breeder fish, the ones we really need to keep. Now, is the Asian market, or is the consumer market taking big fish too? Yep, they are. Is it to the point that the Pay Lakes are? No, but they are taking an extreme amount of fish, and it is exploded in the last 20 years. That the consumer market is. I mean, it is exploded. And then you got states like Kentucky wanting to bring in dog food plants, and they have. I mean, you on your way to, you can go to right there on the way to Cumberland City. You pass Champion Pet Foods every time we go down. I mean, they gave them an unlimited supply of dog food. Now, it don't matter if that fish is 1 pound or 200, it's going to get butchered. So there is a problem on the consumer side, but you have to deal with one problem at a time, and you got to take something that you can conquer. And what's going on, not only is it that they're taking the fish, they're torturing. These fish are being tortured. I mean, what's happening to these fish is absolutely ridiculous, and it should never happen. And it's a problem that should be easily solved in theory. You know what I mean? You can't do it with any other public resource. You shouldn't be able to do it with catfish. And the Pay Lakes, the side of it, I mean, it needs to be heavily regulated. There don't need to be one fish coming from public waters going to a Pay Lake, in my opinion.
Right. So I would like to speak to Micah's question a little bit. 100 million pounds. I'm not sure that there's that much taken out of all of inland fishing, whether we're talking carp, buffalo, catfish, in 3 years combined. In the state of Kentucky is one of your larger poundage-wise sort of states that, as far as catfish goes, and they're taking somewhere between 700,000 and 1 million pounds a year. That's catfish, and that's spread out across channel cats, flatheads, and blues. What he might be referring to is many of the farm-raised channel cats that are then sent to market are also sent to Asia. So whatever statistic he's looking at, much of that could be farm-raised fish. Kentucky itself consumes 2 million pounds of farm-raised fish a year. Kentucky alone. So there very well could be 100 million pounds of farm-raised fish. And if you add everything else into it, I mean, I would probably speculate there's absolutely, depending on what's going on the East Coast, which that's really ramping up, probably 3 million pounds of catfish are fished commercially inland throughout the whole of the United States.
He said, you don't know how many fish are being pulled because you've never got open records requests. I have. I'm not sure that's.
Well, we
But-
have
Well-
actual statistical data stretching across 20 years collected by Kentucky. These are the numbers that Kentucky has turned in every single year.
Micah,
I
comment.
have videos on it.
We're good,
Yeah,
Micah. Let's move on now.
That's
Yeah,
the
this is going to be your warning, Micah. If you can't be respectful, then you will be blocked.
that's the numbers that they, they can only go by what's on the commercial fishing reports.
Right,
Now we know
right.
them commercial fishing reports ain't accurate, but that's statistics you have to go by.
Right.
Have you guys got to see the records from Kentucky? They said that they did a study, like they've done it once a year for the last 15 years from the Greena pool down to Paducah. Have you seen those? Because
Yes, I made a video about it. Yeah.
He's telling me that
staggering.
they've stayed the same, that the population has not dwindled down.
That's not true at all. I was actually just reading it today. I was actually going through the Ohio River Catfish Project, but also through the 2021. It actually concluded in 2021, and it was very clear that there is a gradual decline every year. Sometimes from year to year, it's half, and then it comes back up a little bit. But then there's, like, if you look over a 15-year period, it's a gradual decline, and they say this very conclusively. Which in the scientific world, when you say conclusive, that means you are 99.9% sure, and a miracle would have to occur to change the data that this is the trajectory. 100% the decline. It is a decline. So I don't know what he's looking at, but if you look at the 2021 catfishing report from Kentucky, it lists all these years and it says all this stuff clear as day, black and white.
That's interesting.
I think, and another thing too is, we can only go off the data that they're putting down.
Yes.
I think a lot of that data is skewed,
Yes.
my opinion, because where they're getting their data is through ride-alongs with the commercial fishermen. They're setting. I mean, they got commercial fishermen doing. That's where they're getting their data. They do very little data on their own. Do they do some on their own? Yes, but a lot of it comes from commercial fishermen on commercial fishermen boats, and so I think it's skewed. It's not. There could be a lot better data if they would go on their own and actually do it.
If you like to what Justin just said, when they go with them, the years that they go with them, the data is unbelievably different. It's unbelievable. Like we're not talking about double or triple. We're talking about like catch rates 5 times higher. Explain that. Explain how the years, and this is true in every single state that I studied, Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois. It was all the same. Anytime years where there was legislation being proposed, amendments being proposed, you saw these massive spikes in population, in the number of fish that were being pulled out. And it was not only the numbers of fish, it was the effort. It's really interesting how they quantified effort. It's like a difficult thing to do, but basically they did, and it makes total sense. But what they found is that the years that these people go with them, we're seeing massive numbers of fish being taken out. Immediately following legislation, immediately following it, you see the lowest numbers ever turned in, ever. Like when you look at the 15-year running average, you have this massive spike that says, hey, look how much fish we're catching. We're doing great. The river's doing great. And then the following year, oh, we're doing really bad. Like it's really weird. It's really weird.
And it's
I'll just call it weird.
When they can't if they're on the boat with them, they can't lie about their numbers.
Right.
There was a comment earlier that somebody said, like the tournaments on the Ohio River, if they could keep track of what's weighed in and like show them, like,
They did.
Yeah,
there are studies. Yeah,
that's done. We actually had data all the way back from 2006 on some tournaments when the river was really good. Ron Brooks refused to use it. The DNR said that the data was skewed. It was it was not good data, and he refused to use it.
And who was that?
Ron Brooks, the fisheries director in Kentucky, the old fisheries director. He's retired now. And
Just
In other
because,
words, it was so bad that they had to just not talk about it.
yeah.
exactly what it was.
The logs that we're referring to is about the commercial fishermen. You have to write a log of what you've caught. And basically, it's a handwritten document that you put on a spreadsheet. And the commercial fishermen are supposed to basically, on an honesty policy, write down what they've caught, what size, what all is on that log, you guys. It just, is it weight, breed, like species, not breed, species, or
Species, blue cat, channel cat, flathead, poundage. I think it may be the amount of gear. I can't remember, but it's
The means of catching it also has to be on there. Yeah, I think number of days. I think you also have to. There's some bycatch stuff in there too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, she said,
Yes.
haha, handwritten. Isn't this what you guys were telling us, that some of them were turned in like grand? Like,
Yeah, and they could write basically pretty much. You could turn it in on a napkin while you're sitting in your truck. Finger painting with ketchup.
you can write whatever you want on it, unfortunately. Huh.
One thing I think you brought up tournaments. I don't think we can have an honest conversation about the whole pay lake commercial thing. I think there's since this whole thing's about conservation, we probably should dedicate some time to tournaments and sort of the hazards that are imposed by tournaments. Somebody asked me the other day on Facebook. He came, and it's a guy I've known for 25 years, and he said, do you think tournaments are what's really growing the sport of catfish? And I said, to be honest with you, I don't know that a tournament has ever grown catfishing at all. I think honestly it was YouTube. I think it was people seeing people fishing for catfish and thinking it was cool for the first time, and seeing it on Facebook and stuff. And it's kind of a hard genre to get into if you've never done it before. And so I think that it just made it easier to get into it. And that's what's really exploded the popularity. But I think tournaments are just sort of a side effect. And we're making all the wrong, bad decisions that the bass fishing world made, and they're now dealing with. I think delayed mortality is something that we really need to talk about. The unfortunate part is there's almost no studies done on catfish delayed mortality. I don't think we can continue talking and harping on commercial fishing and pay lakes until we clean our own house. You know what I mean?
Think it's appropriate to bring that up too, because this isn't just a target. I want everybody to be clear. This isn't a target on just pay lakes for what we're doing here at Last Run, the podcast, and what we're doing here. I think bringing awareness to every aspect is important. So it's, irresponsible pay lakes, irresponsible commercial fishing practices, but also we've got to look at what we're doing as tournament anglers or, content creating anglers, because, just like you said, if there's no studies being done, is there harm being brought on? And actually witnessed it firsthand at a tournament, that she was at, where, a fish was released and not in good condition, and they had to, get it healthy again.
So really, like the people that are taking up the slack for us is the bass fishing world. Basically, everything that we know about delayed mortality comes from bass fishing tournaments, and this has been going on since the 70s. The first real delayed mortality study that I saw was in the early 90s, and they were projecting that it was somewhere between 75 and 50%. Prior to that, a lot of people may not know this, but the earliest bass tournaments were all catch and keep.
Yeah.
Like they kept every damn fish. It's insane. But to think about today, that bass fishermen would actually keep their fish, but they used to. So now, when you look at the big tournaments, they've recognized this through the years. They're now gauging that delayed mortality might be somewhere between 15 and 5%, and with your really big tournaments, it may be as low as 2 to 1%. And that's because they're catching the fish, they're doing the weigh-in right there on the boat, fish goes back. Catfishing, obviously a little different. Catfish are a pretty hardy fish. However, when you leave an organism that needs oxygen out of the water for minutes on end, even though they're cold-blooded and they have low metabolic rates, they can go longer without oxygen, you're still doing damage to its brain. You're still doing damage to its organs. It's almost impossible to know what the real delayed mortality rate. I think what a better solution to this would be is we need to encourage tournament directors through certain months of the year to not do tournaments. I mean, that's just that, like, you know, we could all argue about the days. That for me, it would be like the last 2 months of July, all of August, and the first 2 weeks of September. No, you know, so you got like a 2-month period there where you say no tournament. It's just a tough time for fish. It's hot weather, it's hot water. They don't do very well. But that's a conversation that needs to be kicked around in a lot of these little groups.
Talked about oxygen somewhere along the line about, you know, education on how to use oxygen, but also making it a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, making sure if you're doing live well checks, you have oxygen, and do you know how to use it? Maybe say like educate people and make sure that that's what's, you know, it's a simple fix to add to your live well. But again, in the warmer months, it doesn't help the temperature, you know.
And you know, that all can be addressed at captains' meetings, things like that. It only takes 5 minutes to discuss it. Make sure everybody knows how to do it. I really do believe, though. I mean, there's so many tournaments. I mean, I know I catch heck for this, but I mean, if you're gonna, you know, I am, you know, as much as I dislike the pay lakes and everything else, tournaments are a problem. I mean, and the directors of these tournaments, I've talked to many of them, and I'm going to be honest with you, that a lot of them don't care. They want numbers, they want that money from the cities, and they've made it business. And when you allow trailering for 2.5, you can trailer 2 hours down the road and 2 hours back in 100-degree weather. It's a problem. And when you talk about it, they throw you under the bus and make you an outcast. Block you from tournaments. I've been banned from tournaments, brought back into tournaments. I've been and everything for speaking the truth. And I mean, and not only is the tournaments director. I mean, everybody has to blame each other. I got to blame myself. Everybody needs to blame themselves. But I think that we need to do a lot more as far as tournament anglers and the tournament directors. It needs to be addressed. I mean, it really does. I mean, some of the biggest tournaments in the country, and I know because I've fished them, has some terrible mortality rates. Now they can say, well, we went around and we didn't see no dead fish. No, but the coolers, I've seen guys take, I mean, and at least they're taking the dead fish, and some tournaments in particular, and they're letting people eat them. But I mean, it's absolutely, I mean, you know, it's hard to, you know, we can't be a hypocrites, and we have to, you know, address every issue, and tournaments is, as much as I love to fish them, you know, we could get good regulations. I would never fish another.
Do you guys
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Do you think that, like, for the smaller tournament scales, like on the Ohio River, if they did drive-through weigh-ins instead of everybody parking their boats, getting the totes, taking them up, waiting in line, because sometimes that's, you know, a long, dragged-out process waiting for people to get across the scales. If we leave them in the boats and the live wells with water on them instead of, you know, on a dry tote, you think that would help out?
That would absolutely help.
Yeah. That would definitely help for the life of the fish. Absolutely, 100%. Let's go even further and say, I mean, you could almost put an official. If you could get enough volunteers, let's put a volunteer on every boat and just weigh the fish as it comes in, put it back in the water. I mean, if you were really, if you really wanted to do that, you could. But certainly that suggestion is better than hauling them out and sitting in a parking lot at Leavenworth for an hour and a half until it's your turn to weigh in. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Justin touched on it and it pops up in my head and I forgot. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me.
But I also think that, you know,
write it down.
There's tournaments out there that get enough money from the city. It could be ran like that. The problem, it all comes back to money. Everybody's it's money. They want, the reason they don't like the MLB type of weigh-ins where you know, got a fish on a boat is they want that crowd there to see them fish, because they're going to get, the bigger the crowd they bring, the more money for the city, the more they can go back to tourism and say, hey, we had 800 people in attendance and we do this and we fill your hotels and some of the money that they get, that's open record requested too. You can get all that information. And some of it is astounding that what these tournaments are getting. I mean, they've made a business out of it. And I'm fine with that. I don't care. But in return, though, you need to do something for the fish. Conservation should be the number one priority, and it's not.
Yeah. One of the things that I've always done over the years is one of my favorite little pastimes was annoying bass fishermen because it's so easy. But one of the things I always used to suggest whenever they would talk about delayed mortality and how many problems, because you had some of these lakes that were having 200 tournaments a year. Some tournaments, I mean, they would have tournaments on the same lake on the same day, multiple tournaments. And my suggestion was always the same thing. Well, just eat them. Just eat them.
If they're going
to
to
fish.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's going to solve two problems. One, there are going to be a lot less tournaments. Two, your delayed mortality is going to go to zero. So that was something that, I mean, you could kick around in the catfish world. What it would solve is a lot more, the problem with a lot more tournaments. Is that really necessary for catfishing? I don't think so. For bass fishing, I think it is. I think there's just way too many. And what I'm worried about is we're following step for step exactly what the bass fishing world has done, and we're going to run into all the same problems. We're already having the same problems that they're having, and it's all in-house stuff. It's guys that are just like what Justin described. They've turned it into a business. They've made it their livelihood. It's their lifestyle. It's who they are, and now they can't go back. And so I really hope that as a community we can put a stop to this, or at least curb it a little bit. Put a little pressure on, put a little peer pressure on them, and say, hey, these guys tournament, this is how they do it. We're not okay with that. Let's start looking for tournament directors that want to at least start to move in the right direction, right? Like we're not asking you to flip it over today, but like, okay, let's implement this thing like you just mentioned, where let's just pull up to there and get your fish weighed and then let them go, something like that.
Yeah, Jeremy Chase said, delayed mortality, I 100% don't have the evidence to support, but I 100% do believe fish that swim off die from improper care. Everyone needs to do better because that's what the other side is going to say of trophy fishermen. And I know I purchased a dissolved oxygen tester that Justin has, and we need to start testing our participants' live wells to help educate them to do better. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I tested quite a few live wells at tournaments, and let's just say they are bad. Some of the best live wells in the business are not good. And guys will be like, "Oh, I don't need oxygen. I got this. Blah 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 blah." And you test them, and their oxygen is down to 60, 50. You know what I mean? And it's like these fish ain't. They're done. Yeah, they're standing up right in the live well now, but they won't be long. And I don't think it takes major changes. I think that you could still have tournaments. They could still make their money if they just make a couple small changes. And it's like they absolutely refuse to do it. And I mean, we can hold everybody accountable, but the ones that, whoever's having that tournament needs to be held accountable. Yeah. And they don't want to talk about it. Trailering on the Mississippi River and all them, and when you're trailering 2 hours at a time, it's absolutely ridiculous. Rising Sun's weigh in is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I can't pick on just the Mississippi River. Rising Sun's probably got the worst weigh in the country.
Yep.
Within our own pool. They won't change it. Absolutely refuse.
Yeah.
And I've called them out a million times, and it's just it absolutely will not change it.
Do you know who's got the lowest mortality rate? Do you know what tournaments have the lowest? Kayak tournaments.
Oh, someone did bring that up. Where is it at? You could try like a kayak tournament and do a pick and release.
Yes.
What I love about virtual tournaments we do is we weigh them right there after they're caught, and
Mhm.
you know it's easy to do on virtual. I love doing them.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, it really is. To me, it's the way of the future if you really want to preserve the life of these fish. I mean, now obviously you can weigh the fish, but yeah, the problem with weighing a fish in a boat is that you don't get exact. You just don't. And
No.
so when you look at tournaments that come down to an ounce, 2 ounce, 4 ounce, 5 ounce, even a pound, pound and a half, over the course of 3 fish, if you get your 2 overs and your 1 under, that little sway in that boat makes a big difference, and you're going to have a lot of issues with that. To me, it's just measure the damn thing. Like, I don't know, you could just measure the fish. Like, I get it, we all want to see the pounds. Like, that's what has governed tournaments forever. But I just know that if you're going to talk about delay mortality, kayak fishing has zero, virtually zero.
Yeah. I'll tell you another thing that burns me up is these tournaments that are on waters that don't have a 1/35 or a 1/34 and then they got 5 fish weighing where they can bring, or even a 3 fish. You bring in 3 80-pounders, what live well out there can hold 3 80? But they do it all the time.
Yeah.
That right there needs, that's the small things that can be changed. You know what I mean? It's simple. It's simple to change. It's just everybody wants to see them big weights and big fish, and they're doing it for the crowd.
I think we need to realize that we're not the bass fishing world. Okay, our fish eat bass. They're enormous. They have tremendous requirements. We need to do it different. We're not them. Stop trying to be them. Stop wearing all your logo stuff and all that. Who cares about all that? Just we need to do it different. That really is it. Like,
going back to the pay lake thing. I know here, like even tonight, I was going through it earlier on Facebook, and it was one after another after another. I bet you this weekend there was probably over 70,000 pounds I watched go in pay lakes just this. And that's only a few pay lakes. That's not even a quarter of what's out there, and it's absolutely nuts, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, you did a video that talked about like why the fish aren't surviving in a pay lake.
Why they have to die or something.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that in case people are hopping on here that don't really understand why we're talking about this?
Sure. So basically, there is no fiscal or physical way to keep these fish alive. If you want to combine the two, it's physically possible, but it's fiscally impossible. So in order to do that, and the reason why is because the consumption requirements for these fish is just outrageous over the course of a year. For example, I think in the video I used the example of an 80-pound fish. An 80-pound blue cat eats about 5% of its body weight per day. That equates to, I think, 1,460 or so pounds per year. When you look at how, like, productivity of things like largemouth bass, bluegills, crappies, red ears, the size of that lake and the productivity of it would just have to be outrageous to support one fish. When we look at these places, they're putting in dozens and dozens of these fish. In order to keep them alive, you would go broke trying to fill them up with forage. You just would. Now you can supplement. You can put 500 of this, 500 of that once a year, and that might extend the life of some of those fish for, let's say, a week. Most of the fish that are going to survive are going to be your smaller fish. They're more resilient. They require less nutrients. They're a lot less susceptible to things like low oxygen environments. Big fish need lots of oxygen. But your big fish, they're dead, guaranteed, gone, dead. And so don't ever let anyone tell you that they're not killing these fish. Yes, one might hang on, That's not, there might be a good bait stealer in the bunch or two. Absolutely. But the idea that all of these fish are surviving, there's absolutely no reason for Paradise Extreme to be putting another 55,000 pounds in their lakes this year. If that was true, they would never need to stock another fish in any of these lakes ever again. Like Justin said, there's 70,000 pounds just in the ones that he looked at. I'm telling you, if that's true, they would never have to stock another fish this year. But they will. They'll stock 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times some of them. It's crazy. The flatheads, I didn't include those because they're weird. Flatheads can survive in those environments, and they do. However, they need a lot of food, and there's none in there. So we know that they're dying as well. But blue cats, that's the majority of what we're seeing going in here, especially big ones, and there's just absolutely no way. And I wanted to illustrate that in the video. So
You did a good job.
Yeah, that was a really informative video.
Well, I actually ran across an article today, and I sent it to Justin through a text message. I didn't send him the whole article, but I just saw him. I sent him a snapshot of the first page. And what it was is it actually come from the University of Kentucky, but it was in unison. They worked with the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, and there's like 50 other institutions across from Florida all the way to Kentucky to make this article. And it was a 4-page article that basically where they just did a giant study of Kentucky pay lakes. They called them fee fishing or something like that. But anyway, they say very specific things in there, like it is optimal to feed your fish less than 1% of their body weight per day to maximize them biting a hook, to take a hook. They say all kinds of crazy stuff in this article, but it basically lays out it was a guide essentially for someone that wanted to start a pay lake. And it said that it's a minimum. You have to stock at least 1,000 pounds per surfaced acre at least once a year by law in the state of Kentucky if you're going to charge people a rate to fish. So in other words, you can't swindle them. You know what I mean? You have to put something in there. And this included all pay lakes. This isn't just trophy pay lakes. You have to put 1,000 pounds, whether it's channel cat, farm raised, whatever, they don't care. You just have to put them in there. But it went on to say, oh gosh, it basically said it may be optimal depending on your clientele to not feed your fish at all, or else people won't show up because they know you feed your fish. It said that, or you could choose to feed your fish at night. It was really crazy. The things that was in there. I couldn't believe they actually wrote it down. But I'm probably going to put that in a video because I want everybody to see that. But,
Absolutely.
But yeah, I could talk about that forever. But
well, back in the day, in the old days, you always heard people feeding their fish pay lakes. Oh, they fed them today, they're not biting, Or but nowadays, they don't feed them nothing. They want them to bite. They want guys to go there and whack fish from the time they get there to the time they leave because they're so easily available nowadays. And it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, tickets to these pay lakes now are $30. You know what I mean? And when you feel you get 500 people at one on a weekend, that's a lot of money.
Why are they so available, Justin? How are they so available?
Commercial fishing. I mean, you get, the whole commercial fishing market. I describe it as a on the water scrapyard. You know what I mean? They work the same way. You get your crackheads that go around and steal your air conditioning units and your copper out of your walls and your wiring and dig it through your trash, and they go and get their fix that morning at the scrap yard. They hand them a handful of cash, and they're done until they need another fix. Same way how it happens with pay lakes or commercial fishing. You get these guys, and I'm not saying that there's not some good guys out there, but for the most part, what we've seen is it's the trash scum of the earth that they go out in their John boats, they get 300-400 pounds, take them and to the Lake City Fish House, for example, get their handful of cash, and they do the same thing day in and day out. Lake City, sells to everybody else. That's the middleman, and it's I mean, it's an all cash business. It's very corrupt, and it's just, it's terrible. I mean, it's bad.
Yes.
And it needs to be fixed.
We touched on this a little bit last time, but I had a video sent to me yesterday, actually, and it was from a pay lake, and it was an elderly gentleman, and what I'm assuming is his grandson, because it was a younger kid, and the guy was reeling in like a 73-pound blue, and he was so excited, and his grandson was just as excited for him. And the person that sent it to me is a dear friend. I'm not mentioning their name, but like people like that, I feel like they go because they don't have access to get out on the river, you know? So we're not saying that all pay lakes are bad. Like, I understand some people don't have the access that we do to get on the water.
Yeah.
So we need to remember that, like, when we're seeing this stuff, when we're sending it to people, like, I'm pretty sure that gentleman has no idea the things that are going on behind the scenes there. He's just out for a good weekend with his grandson to catch a big fish.
Yeah. And, you know, like I think I said last week, you know, I have no problems with pay lakes. You know, as long as they stock farm raised fish. I've watched some pay lakes in Kentucky this weekend. I mean, they are stocking farm raised fish galore, thousands of pounds. I won't mention who it is, but and when, you know, they've been doing videos of them putting in 500 pounds this day, 1,000 pounds this day. And they have to put that many in because they catch them as fast as they put them in. And these guys are leaving with baskets full of stuff. And the lake was packed, filled. I mean, you couldn't get another person in it in some of these videos. And that right there goes to show you they could make money off farm fish. The problem is it takes a lot more work to go get farm raised fish because, you know, most of them guys, if they're buying them from, you know, the middleman, that ups the cost, and it's just, you know, now
the margins are lower.
Yeah, and these pay lakes the ones that I'm talking about, he'll start stocking big fish in about probably another month. Even within that, but right now, early in the year, they all channel. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand. You can make money off of Channel Cat. I mean, you can. They had I've seen pay lakes with thriving businesses from Channel Cat, but they're not going to do it unless they are forced to do it. They can still gamble. They can still do everything on that size of fish. Now, granted, you know, everybody wants to catch a big fish, but you know,
yeah. Go ahead.
I don't know how I know everybody wants to catch a big fish, but sometimes it's just not possible. You know what I mean? You can't kill a big deer from your couch.
That's it.
And
that really is, yeah, exactly what Justin just said. I completely sympathize with that old man and that little boy.
Yeah.
Because I was that too. My grandfather used to take me fishing. I understand that if I didn't have, you know, if there was some situation where that was not an option, but this was an option. This pay lake was an option, right? You're never going to see me look at that, or most of any of us, and say, "Yep, those are bad people." Bull crap. Right. That's not what's going on here.
No.
What we're saying is exactly the analogy that Justin just made. You can't kill a big deer from your couch. As much as I want to, as much as everybody would like to, you cannot do it. You can't do it. And the reality is, do we say, okay, only old men and little kids can go to these? Is that how we do it? Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel for him. I guess I want to say more. I don't know how much I should say, but that's not the point of this, I guess, is what I would say.
I think that's where, Ashley, we had talked about it, where more access to public access to rivers. Yeah. I think that's where that kind of stuff comes in. More handicapped, accessible fishing piers, you know, somewhere to give them the opportunity to be able to fish where the big fish actually are.
Yes.
I reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers trying to see like where we start with that, and I didn't get a response back from them, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah.
Just start building.
Yep.
The reality is what you're describing is also fish habitat. if you're building piers, you're building fish habitat
Yep.
as well. I mean, and they go hand in hand. When you build places for people to fish that are piers, that are, wing dikes and all these other things that you can build to make fishing more accessible, to make trails and stuff more, you're building fish habitat as well. So yeah, that's Justin's exactly right. So are you. Yeah.
And I think programs like the one you're running with Vets with Nets,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people can get with some programs like that if they're a veteran or they're, any kind of organization that's want to take kids out or something like that. I mean, there could be, options out there if you want to catch a big fish. I know that everybody's not going to, get to do it, but I mean, and that's where I think, I've met some of the best people in my life growing up at a pay lake, so I would, it's not necessarily the people that's fishing them all there's some, no good, don't get me wrong, but that's everywhere. But, there's so much that could be done, but the laws have got to, and nothing's going to change until they are forced to not stock trophy fish or say wild caught fish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any question for these guys? Because these guys, they know their stuff. So if you've got questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. I know we've learned a lot talking to them.
Absolutely.
And, I think, I talk to a lot of people. I mean, I talk to pay lakers. I talk to, regardless of where they fish, I try to preach a good word everywhere. And, a lot of people that you talk to really don't know. And like with Ohio don't have a lot of waters like they do down south. Down south, They got much more water. So I understand that the DNR is wanting to work with everybody, but allowing them to take fish from public waters, it's killing everything. I mean, it's hurting everybody, and that's what they don't understand. And these pay lakes, I mean, some of these places, they just they're in it for the quick money, easy money, tax-free money, and they're hurting everybody.
Yeah.
Micah's comment was, what are some ideas to curb commercial fishing in your areas? Do you guys think, like Dave told me on the phone with the Kentucky DNR, like taking pictures and videos of them pulling up their nets with the big fish, do you think that's going to deter them any? Like if people really start paying attention to what they're doing and it gets reported accurately? You've been doing this way
I think they might look over their shoulder a few more times. I think they might be a little more cautious, but you're not going to keep them off the water if that's the. I mean,
I think that the penalties are stiff enough to deter. It's a price of doing business. One fish will cover them, and they'll be out the next day. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to start with legislation, and then once we can get something on the books, which we can't hardly get what we got on the books enforced now. And then when they do enforce it, it's a small fine, a slap on the wrist, and so I think it's hard. I think we need to more podcasts like this. I think more just bringing it out there, letting everybody know why, because as the fishing declines, more and more people is going to start. A lot of, it hit our area first as far as destroying our rivers. As it moves farther south, and it's moving quickly, more and more people are starting to see it. And as that fishing declines and they start seeing that decline, a lot of people won't do nothing until it hits them, until they see it personally. They feel that effect. And I think, I think that's when, we're going to make more ground. The more people we can get involved in this, the more ground we're going to cover.
Yeah, Travis Life's comment was about the I forget what they call it. I think it's at Paradise where they do that big tournament and they pay like $650 for an entry fee and they can win $99,000. So, I mean, when they have tournaments like that, it's hard to convince people that this is not a good thing.
You're not ever going to convince them. Never.
Yeah, it's and it, you know, unfortunately, again, it's about the money, and it's
I don't know. I don't know that commercial fishing is who we should even really be looking at, and the reason why is it's impossible. It's impossible. Like if you think about it, there are, I don't know how many ports of entry would there be on the Ohio River, given a 120-mile stretch on either side. Would there? I mean, you're talking dozens of ports of entry, and they're open day and night. And just like you guys said, I can tell you from looking at the commercial data that May and June are your big. Those are your big times. What's going on in May? Turkey season. You just don't have the manpower. You would have to have a guard check at every single port of entry. You have to be checking everybody. The problem with that is nobody wants to live in a country where you live like that, where you have to get checked going in the water and going out of the water. Nobody's going to agree to that. So it's sort of one of those things where we say, yes, we want more, more policing of this, but I don't think people realize what that looks like. What does that look like? Well, I mean, it'll look a lot like, I mean, I don't want to compare it to Nazi Germany, but I mean, it's not going to be good. You're looking at, you're like crossing the border somewhere, like somebody's going to be checking everybody and nobody's going to go for that. And there's not financing for that. So I think the real thing that you have to get on the books is the pay lakes. You have to find a way to get those guys like Kentucky did. Kentucky's brilliant. The way that they got pay lakes worked into that department under their jurisdiction. Ohio needs to do that, and Indiana needs to do that. I think that's where you're going to make the big difference. Is when at the end of the day, all those fish end up there. They could go anywhere in the country, but at the end of the day, they're gonna go through those gates, and that's where you want to regulate them. To me personally, I think that's to Micah's question. I think that's probably is. I don't even know that we look at the commercial fishermen, to be honest with you.
Well, we touched on it last week, and this would fix a lot of the enforcement issue because they always complain they don't have enough manpower, and I give it, they don't have enough manpower. So why would you allow something that you can't hardly enforce?
Right.
Well, you do what Ohio did and on Lake Erie. Ohio, everybody on Lake Erie has GPS in their boat. That way, they know where they're at. They know what ramp they're using. And if they want to go check them that day, they can go check them.
Yeah. And it's electronic log too, right? Like they can do their log right then and there.
Yep. And the thing is, we went to Kentucky with this idea and we had it paid for. It was not going to come out of, we had a guy that was going to pay for the whole everything for this. This was not going to come out of their pocket. And they refused. Absolutely threw a fit. Commercial threw a fit because they did not want to be tracked because evidently, I mean, we all know why. We look at the commercial fishing reports. We know what they turn in. They don't want to turn it in because they don't want to get caught. They're breaking the law. And I hate to say that, but I mean, it's the truth. I mean, they just look what they just did over the weekend. I just seen a report where they had I think I don't know the numbers. I can't remember. It's like 60. They went on a spoonbill, was busting guys with fish. They checked them, and they had 60. What? It was 129 or something out of 63. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was something insane. It was something insane. They did like 39. It was 39 boats.
Yeah, and
50 or 60 something actual fishermen, and they walked away with like 130 citations.
So that goes to these guys are doing it every day, and it's just a free for all because they know if they do get caught, what are they going to do? Pay $100 and they're out there doing it the next day. Mm-hmm. So I think but here's the problem with Kentucky. It's like I said last week, the Asian carp problem in Kentucky is bringing in so much money. They're going to keep their commercial fishermen happy. and in my opinion, is the reason we are having trouble in the state of Kentucky with this issue. Is they are, because I've been in meetings where they sat and told us. I've heard the commercial fishermen stand up and say, "Take our catfish, we won't fish for your Asian carp. Consider it."
You know,
And
I've thought about that a lot, Justin. And I'll let you keep going, but remind me because I want to come back to that.
And they've, I've had multiple conversations with DNR, with not DNR, they're not DNR, but Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, Ron Brooks, and I mean, it's their cash cow. Asian carp is their cash cow, and they basically gave them the catfish to keep them there so they'll harvest their Asian carp. They brought in these dog food plants. They guaranteed them all these blue cats. Well, they know what happens when they run out of blue cats. They're just going to force them to go. They ain't going to close a $100 million plant. They're going to go to Asian carp.
Yeah.
And that's their plan.
That was exactly what I remember when you told me that. And I thought, well, yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. And if they don't, some young guys who want to make a living doing it will. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean,
they say that, but they don't want to pull. It's all about that federal funding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they want it. A patient cured is a patient lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not even about you. I get on them commercial fishing pages on Facebook. Fishermen's Against Asian Carp is one of them.
Yes.
And it's not even about eradication anymore. It's about building an industry around
it. Yeah. That's all it is about now. Yeah.
They actually pulled on the Mississippi River in Memphis. They actually pulled the consumption advisory off of Asian carp, big head, and silver, but left it on for everything else because they want to put them in restaurants.
Yeah.
They even changed the name from silver carp and big head carp to Kobe to try to get people to eat them.
Yeah.
And they spent millions of taxpayer dollars doing it.
Yeah.
Fancy.
In Illinois and Kentucky.
Yeah.
I mean, this rabbit hole is deep.
So Micah is saying that they cut the carp funding because the Doge, whoever, DOGE.
I'm hoping Doge, yeah, it's not cut yet, but it's, I'm hoping it's
the process because of Elon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, guys, what can we do to help you? Because you've been fighting this fight. And there have been people asking, like we set up at the Cincinnati Boat and RV show and had a conservation poster with the printouts and stuff that you guys have been doing. And it got conversations started. So people that are on here, maybe hearing this for the first time and wondering like how they can help, what do you suggest they do?
So really, I mean, there's obviously there's awareness you can bring to it. Even something as piddly as hitting a like button. I mean, that improves the algorithm. That tells Facebook, that tells YouTube to send it to more people. You can call your congressman. And you could do that anytime, not just when an amendment's going on or a bill is being proposed. You could do that anytime and tell them, hey, any legislation that's coming down the pipe that has anything to do with protecting our catfish, protecting our waterways, I want it. I want that. You know what I mean? Everybody can do that. But I guess for me, how I got into this was first it angered me. It bothered me. The same way it's bothering you guys. And then I said, I'm going to start studying this. I'm going to start talking to people. And so that would be my advice to you, is to start learning as much about it. You don't have to take our word for it. Go look at some of these Pay Lake pages. You'll see all you need to see. And if that doesn't make you angry, then maybe you shouldn't be involved in it, I guess.
And one thing that maybe just to piggyback on that is because of so many people that are active on social media that do catfish, they're sharing the post, but maybe include in that post that you're sharing about, maybe the overstocking of trophy catfish to call the legislature in the state you live in, and let them know the same thing like you just said. Let them know that anything that comes through that is to protect catfish, I want that, I'm in favor of that. So add that to your post. Don't just share it, but say what your viewers that you have a voice in your group, let them know what they can do, with their post.
I would add,
but I never knew I could call my legislature until you reached out.
Yeah, and Kentucky makes it easier than anybody. They got something called the LRC message line. This is a line that you call, you say where you're from, and they find him for you or her, whoever your legislator is. They make sure for you that it gets to the right person. It's so easy. It's the easiest thing you could ever imagine.
The lady answered for me. So just if anyone in Kentucky watches this or is watching now, a lady answered, and I wasn't sure because it was my first time calling, but I wanted to make sure. I'm telling everyone to call, so I need to make sure I know what to do. And she's like, well, honey, there's nothing on the bill about that. There's no bills about it now. And I'm like, all right, hold on. Let me figure out what I need to do. And so just letting them know you're calling to talk to your legislator because you want to talk to them and let them know that you're in favor of anything to protect catfish. That's it. And then you'll move on from there.
Yeah. And I would go, awareness. A squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but the legislators and the state reps and these people, they want to know. They're going to fight for the biggest group, the one that's got the most numbers. That's who they're going to represent because these people are voted in, and they want to keep their job. And so my biggest thing for. The easiest thing is basically awareness. Preach it everywhere you can. The more they hear about the problem, the better it is for us. Legislators, state reps, DNR. I know I drive them nuts and I love it, but the more they hear about it, the better off we are. Yeah. And it doesn't matter where you're at, grocery store, funeral home. It don't matter. I preach it everywhere.
Yeah, there's a comment that popped up that said if some of these wildlife officers would go to these pay lakes randomly, they would see how disgusting they are. And I'm not disagreeing, but I don't think that they can really do anything about it, especially here in Ohio. Like our DNR can't just go to a pay lake and decide that they're breaking the law.
You can go in there and open your minnow bucket up and check your bait. But other than that, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why
in Kentucky they do that.
Yeah. Now Kentucky's different. Yeah. Kentucky has a license, so that gives the oversight of the fish and wildlife. Yeah. Which is what we're working. We're talking with Ashley, and I got that sent to a guy, and he's going over it. Well, So, but it is Ohio. That's the first thing we need to do is get oversight on who is going to, because that's the biggest problem we have. No one's over it.
Yeah. That's something I think we should have probably prefaced in the beginning, is that there's probably people wondering how something like this can be allowed to keep going, and the reality is there's nobody looking. There's nobody. I mean, you've got, like we talked about before we even went on the air. We talked for a minute about the jurisdiction that they have. How they basically have jurisdiction over until you reach the point of sale, and then from that point on, it's out of their hands. They can't touch it. They can't look at it, and it falls under the Department of Agriculture. It's the same in Indiana. It's the same in Ohio. Once those fish go into that, they're considered livestock or inventory if you're the business. At that point, those Department of Natural Resources, nobody looking at it. There's nobody. These people can do whatever they want to do. So there's that really what Justin just said, getting these into the fold of these wildlife agencies where they should be, because these are wild fish that they're keeping alive. Absolutely, they should be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got another thing too, real quick. If we got time. So I keep getting a question that, I see it all the time. I get told it all the time. Like, why don't Ohio stop them from bringing in fish into these pay lakes or put a regulation on how much they can stock? Well, here's the answer to that question. And the reason that Ohio can't stop them from bringing in fish from Kentucky is because it's the interstate commerce law. If them fish was coming from Ohio's waters, then Ohio could regulate them fish. But because them fish are not coming out of Ohio's waters, because Ohio don't allow the commercial fishing,
That's right. Yeah.
they can't stop somebody from buying fish and bringing them across state lines that was purchased legal in another state.
Yeah.
That's the reason why, you know, if them now Kentucky can't stop fish from Tennessee entering Kentucky if they was purchased legally to a pay lake. They can only, that's 750 pounds per surface acre. That don't include, now here's the loophole. That don't include fish coming from Alabama or Tennessee. That don't include fish coming from Maryland. So all they have to do is doctor this paperwork up and say that these fish are not coming from Kentucky waters. And as long as they got a napkin with written in lipstick saying, I purchased 1,000 pounds from, Michael Jackson, that's all they need. It's a he said case. And there's no one's keeping track of none of this. I mean, that's all they need. And literally, so the only fish Kentucky can regulate is the fish coming out of Kentucky's water because they're Kentucky's resource. Just like with Ohio cannot stop them. If they want to bring in 2 million pounds, they can bring in 2 million pounds as long as they have paperwork saying that them fish came from Kentucky and was purchased legally.
Yeah.
State commerce is what keeps them from doing that. That's the law. So in Alabama, they say, well, how come Alabama can do it? Alabama can only regulate the fish coming out of Alabama. And that's what people don't understand. They can haul fish out of Alabama. They can't haul live fish out of Alabama.
Right. Yeah.
And they can only regulate if somebody wants to come through Alabama with a load of fish, as long as they got documentation of where that fish came from, they can haul live fish right through Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the interstate commerce. So there's all kinds of loopholes. There's all kinds of ways around things. And, you know, but that's why Ohio can't stop Kentucky or Tennessee or Maryland or Virginia, is because interstate commerce protects them from it.
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
One more comment here, and then so he says, what tells you how people really think about conservation? There's only 12 viewers on here. We are streamed to, is it 5 different things, Julie?
At least 4.
Yeah. So it's not just what you're seeing on the screen there. Like, we're streamed on multiple pages, so there's more than 12 people watching. But I agree. Like he says, we need to talk about it at tournaments, the next big thing, and there will be hundreds watching. So the more we talk about it, you know, like Justin said, just keep bringing it up, make a conversation.
And, you know, that's a good point. So that would be really great to see some changes in the tournaments, because one of the things I like to do is I live stream tournaments. Whenever we go to one, I try and get back as soon as I can, you know, as soon as Charlie will let me come back from, you know, fishing it, and I live stream it. And that is my highest views I usually get beyond us going and fishing and anything like that. I usually have 100 to 300 people during the whole thing. And, you know, in the whole live itself, I mean, one time it was 10,000 viewers, and that was at the Dry Creek tournament, and there wasn't a ton of boats going through. So seeing changes that I can, you know, if we could get some tournament directors on board that, you know, I can say, you know, they require oxygen to keep them healthy, or and bringing up conservation is something that, like, you know, I think tournament directors are good about saying, you know, look how healthy they are when they pull them out of the live well, and, you know, it keeps them healthy in those live wells instead of doing the walk up, you know, from the boat kind of, you know what I mean? The drive through style and stuff like that. So that is good to see that, but, like, you know, seeing a little bit of changes, just kind of to making sure that, you know, the oxygen's going on and things like that. It could be nice to be able to touch on and bringing up conservation while I'm streaming. Again, this isn't something that I really thought about before we've dove into this topic. So I appreciate you guys bringing awareness to me.
You know, oh, go ahead.
No, well, I was just saying, like, for me, like, because I never thought about that aspect. Like, yeah, I'm excited and glad to see that the fish are healthy. And you know how mad they are when they come out in the live well and they're ready to go. So, you see that aspect, and that's a good positive thing. But I never really thought any deeper into it.
Yeah. And I'd like to throw a little kudos out. I talked to Brian St. Alma when they had when he was running Cat Masters, and he was really the only tournament director that actually wanted to improve the tournaments. We talked one day, and he was talking about live well size regulations. He was one of the ones that was going to mandatory use of oxygen, but it's like when you talk to the rest of them, I can't say all, but I haven't talked to every single one of them. There's a lot of them that it's like it falls on deaf ears. It's like you're telling them that they can't weigh but one fish in. It's like, I mean, it's like the craziest thing. So, but I want to give props to Brian St. Alma, because he did when he was running Cat Masters. I think he wanted to take the tournament fishing to hold it to a higher standard. And I think more tournament directors should do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that, because if we don't have healthy fish, like, what's the point of having a tournament if you're not going to follow through from the catching the fish, keeping the fish alive, to releasing the fish and weighing the fish in? Like it's all part of it, Like you said, we can't hold Pay Lakes accountable if ourselves as anglers aren't going to worry about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just another topic to bring up, talk to more people about too.
Yeah.
But if nobody has any more questions, we should probably hop off of here. But next week we are going to have Steve Douglas on with us, so we get to talk to the catfish dude. I know Julie and I are super excited for that, to be on the same screen with him and see what he has to say about the conservation efforts. Because he has said multiple times it's time for the next generation to help step up. So
I had a conversation with him this week.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe did.
But we appreciate you, Dave and Justin, for taking time out of your Saturday to be on here with us. And make
Thanks for having me.
The week has been crazy. So
thank you guys so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
See you next time.
All right.
Did you end it?
Yeah.
Mine still has end stream, so
It's ending. It's